unions in Apple stores, and the customer iPhone repair experience. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Zocdoc. Find local doctors who take your insurance. Learn more at Zocdoc.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is MacVoices Live. It's Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, whatever time that is, wherever you are. We are in the YouTube chat room at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. We'd love to have you there. We have some of our friends in there already, and hopefully more will be arriving at any second. We have a lot of friends that you're used to seeing. We have one friend that you're not used to seeing. So we'll just go around the room, introduce everyone, and then we'll get to it. First up, Mr. David Ginsburg. David, welcome. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Chuck. It's always great to be here. And it's the eve of coming to the 4th of July holiday. So it's good to have some fun chatting here before we go and do some rest here. So.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to this July 4th holiday. No question about it. Yeah. The gentleman we haven't seen for a while, Mr. Jay Miller, has returned. Apparently, he got bored with not abusing me and came back. Jay, it's good to have you.
Funny enough, when you bump into other panelists on the streets, you start getting a pining to come visit everyone again.
Which panelists would that be that you bumped into on the streets?
I'm sure you'll introduce him in a second.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's great to have you back. I'm sure glad you made it back.
Happy to be here.
So the next one up on my screen is Mr. Jim Ray. Jim,
That's
welcome.
The one.
That's the one.
That was the one right there.
So this is Jim's fault.
This is Jim's fault.
This is Jim's fault.
What did I do?
You apparently incited Mr. Miller to come back and visit us.
Wow. There you go. I'm inciting him to do all kinds of things. We'll see what else he does.
I'm afraid to know what those might be.
Other meetups.
Oh, okay. Well, speaking of being afraid, Mr. Jeff Gamet is here. Jeff, great to have you.
It's great to be here, and and I appreciate your concern. It's with good cause.
I never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yep. This checks out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen to all the previous editions of MacVoices Live that Jeff has been on. You'll understand. Last but not least, from, I guess, a landmark of some stature, Mr. Mark Fuccio is here. Mark, welcome.
Hi, Chuck. Welcome. Yeah, it's well known. It's the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. And a year ago today, my wife and I were checking out that hotel and sort of the 2/3 way mark on our drive from New York back to California. So I figured it's probably it's a nice picture, nice area, and we don't have the horror of Jack Nicholson, coming by and tearing up rooms with a fire axe. But the outside of the hotel is a nice looking venue. So I figured it's a great background.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing it.
The inside's nice too.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, good. Well, maybe one of these days I'll get to it. That's a place I haven't stayed yet.
And if you turn around 180 degrees, the view is quite spectacular.
Okay, good. So we have a travel
out of the back of my head.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck, if you decide to come out and stay at the Stanley, I get to return the favor that you always offer when we're in Vegas. I mean, all the places to go. So when you come out here, I know all the places to go. I've got your back.
Keep that in mind, Jeff. Keep that in mind. That sounds good. How many of them have you been thrown out of?
How much time do we have?
All right. In the next edition of MacVoices, we'll have Jeff reveal how many places he's been thrown out of. Guys, we have one holdover story from last week. We just simply ran out of time and didn't get to it. And I'm going to leave it up to you as to whether you think it's worth commenting on, since very little has really developed so far since then. And that was the fact that the Towson, Maryland Apple Store voted yes to unionize. And so what does this mean for Apple? What does this mean for tech in general? Because up to this point, for the most part, the union issues have kind of been with Amazon, and to see Apple lead the way in this one is sort of interesting. I guess if I have it correct, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but the only thing I think that's really developed this week is that Apple has said they wouldn't go back, I guess, and fight or appeal the union vote, that they would just go ahead and bargain in good faith.
Right. I think that's it. So I think to your questions, what does it mean? I think it's too early to tell because there's no information there other than they filed for a union. And I think ultimately depends on what is it they want in collective bargaining. Are they going to be sort of mild and, sort of the things that, they've won in court appeals of, you make us wait and check our baggage, when we come in and come out. Well, that's something you should be paying us for. So I believe that was one. I know that was one in California courts. I don't know if that was a benefit that was transmitted nationwide. So maybe that's something they might want to bargain for. Or they could be really hostile, like some of the UAW unions are, where they have very restrictive work rules. And if something like that were to develop, I think the union could get between Apple and its customers, and that could create a very bad experience. But I'm just illustrating those as two ends of the spectrum, because without any information, we really don't know. The other point I would make is I prepared it for last week. I went, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look, membership in unions has just basically been, on a downhill slope since 1980, 1970, 1960. And if you look at the member of unions by different demographic age groups, the lowest is in the 18 to 25, or maybe it's 24. I don't remember offhand the boundary of the bin. And that has the lowest participation. So maybe this is just, younger people in that group, getting organized to bring them up to their union participation rate, of other age groups, which on its whole is not large. It's, it's in the, I don't even think it's in the teens. I think it's like 12%. So, I'm thinking it could just be sort of, a regression to the mean type of phenomena. And until we know more, okay, it's interesting. Let's see what else is new.
Okay.
We're seeing this this trend back into more unionization, and I'm finding this very interesting because, like Mark was saying, the trend has been on a decline for decades, and then over the past couple of years, especially, we're seeing a lot of people in different industries, deciding that they need to have better representation. And of course, the big obvious one is Amazon, and Amazon has been fighting that a lot. Starbucks is another example, and the way Starbucks, is handling their stores unionizing is, at least on the surface, and I don't know all the details, but it's bad optics. It doesn't look like they're handling it well. So what I'm hoping is that the way this plays out with employees and Apple is not like what we're seeing at Amazon and what we're seeing at Starbucks, but instead something where there's more of a genuine good faith collaboration between the company and the union. And what we see is ultimately a win for everyone. I don't think Apple wants bad optics. So the fact that they said, okay, we're not going to fight this, let's just start negotiating, that sounds like a positive sign to me. But we don't know, like Mark said, we don't know what the employees union is going to be asking for. So that could change how this plays out. But I hope it's positive.
Jeff, the only thing I would add is that this particular vote seemed to be so overwhelmingly in favor. I mean, it's not like it was, just a few percentage points. It was pretty heavy in on the positive side. And I wondered if that, I agree with you on the optics completely, but I wondered if that had something to do with the fact that Apple figured they're just not going to win it. And, win, lose, or draw optics, there are several reasons not to fight it. Just go ahead and bargain it out in good faith. And, hopefully everybody on both sides will operate in good faith.
Yes, and Apple has bragged about how they're so great to their employees over the years, and I think that at this point, if they had said, "Hey, we're going to fight this union," that would have gone contrary to what they've been saying publicly. So they're kind of in a position where, regardless of how strong the vote was in favor of unionizing, they kind of had to go along with it, or look like hypocrites.
Yeah, agreed. Jay, any thoughts on this?
Just one. Jeff, you mentioned kind of the surprise here was how much of a percentage of the acceptance vote was, for unionization. And a part of me, like my initial thought was maybe it's a New York thing. I know a lot of New Yorkers, they like to be tough and gritty, and I think about some of the other areas and kind of how that works. I would think that certain areas of New York are probably pretty union, like I won't say pro-union to like politicize it, but I think there's a tradition, more of a tradition, and I think that a lot of that decision to unionize is based on that, the historical means of unionization. Oh, my dad was in a union, oh, everybody in my family was a part of this union or whatever. So for them, it's not this big of a deal, whereas Southern California, unions aren't really that big of a thing here. So when you hear about union messages, oh, unions, what? So I take the percentage with a grain of salt, but one of the things, kind of echoing what Mark said, was right now the response from Apple will determine hiring efforts for the next generation of developers. We've already seen the millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, all of these kids. I sit down and talk to them a lot, just as my job. Their personal feelings matter more when it comes to choosing who I want to work for. How that company responds to certain things happening in this space, whether it's the decision to unionize, supporting and all those things, it means more. So for them, the optics are more of, in a world where people are being offered twice their salary to jump ship and work at one company versus another, do you want to make your job that much harder by having a bad optics session towards, company whatever must not care about their employees because when they decided to unionize, the company got mad and said, no, we don't want that. So I don't think necessarily this is a good feelings thing or anything like that. I think Apple is listening and waiting to see what is the successful message of other companies. We've seen what happens when responding to unionization goes wrong. But what happens when it goes right? And let's do more of that, because otherwise we're making it harder for us to hire the next 5-10 years of software engineers and other high-tech work employees, because the generation coming in cares about these type of topics more than the previous generation, my generation.
Those are some really interesting points, Jay, and I agree with you completely. In interacting with the younger generations, they have, I'm not going to say a totally different set of values or value systems, but significantly different. And I mean, I've had some conversations, we won't get into exactly what the topics are, but there are times I want to kind of sit back and say, are you serious? And, they are very serious about it. So I applaud them. They feel very strongly about certain things. And so good for them, and I think your points about, Apple responding positively to this kind of development are spot on. David, Jim, you're both sitting over there, kind of quiet. You want to get in on this, or?
Not really.
I mean, I'll just be a brief one. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Zocdoc. Find doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. If you're a fan of it, sushi is incredible. But gas station sushi, not so much. Finding the right sushi makes all the difference. The same goes for finding the right doctor. With Zocdoc, you can find the right doctor for you, in your network, and in your neighborhood. One that makes you feel like you're in good hands, you're supported, and you're heard, even if you're telling them about your favorite sushi place. Zocdoc is a free app that shows you doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. Zocdoc's mobile app is as easy as ordering a ride to a restaurant or getting delivery to your house. Search, find, and book doctors with just a few taps. Every month, millions of people use Zocdoc. If I need a quality doctor, Zocdoc is where I go. Go to Zocdoc.com/MacVoices and download the Zocdoc app for free. Then start your search for a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's Zocdoc, ZocDoc.com/MacVoices. Zocdoc.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Zocdoc for supporting this week's MacVoices.
Any Apple employees I've talked to seem happy in their role, in their job. I don't know how a union is going to make things better. You guys hit on a lot of the subjects. This store was in Maryland, so but I think in New York and there was another city in the article said that they're considering as well. But I don't know. I'm just kind of like in the middle of it all. I don't think I've never been in a union. I've never really found it to be beneficial. I mean, my wife's a school teacher. They have a union, and it seems like they don't get as much benefit out of it than others. So I don't know. I don't know how beneficial it's going to be. I worked in retail for a long time, and retail work is tough, and they do make you work a lot of extra hours, especially during the holiday season. And so they had a lot of retailers did not like having a union. So that's what Amazon's is getting it, and Walmart was potentially experiencing it too. So see.
One place where I see a union as beneficial in retail, and this is coming from personal experience working in retail for a long time, years ago. The collective bargaining, if nothing else, if it helps with scheduling, then it's a win. Because scheduling in retail is straight up garbage. I mean, the employees are given just horrible schedules. You don't know from week to week what you're working. I mean, there's no consistency. It's very common to have your days completely screwed because instead of scheduling you for a shift, they have to put you on a split shift, which means you work half a shift and then you have some time off, and then you come and work the second half of your shift, which basically means you've lost your entire day to the company for what will ultimately end up being a partial shift because they're not going to give you the full 8 hours. So if it can help with that, and I'm not saying this is what Apple does, but if collective bargaining in retail spaces can help with things like that, then to me, I would see that as a win.
Jeff, in May, I think also relative to retail jobs, there's a difference between are you full-time or if you're part-time? Because I think, so my general understanding is, there are many, many stores that they try to avoid having somebody be full-time because it triggers, they have to pay them all sorts of additional benefits, healthcare,
Benefits.
overtime, different overtime rates, and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
as a result, you get a Scrabble board of absolutely inhumane scheduling. I do not believe that I've heard anywhere in this debate about Apple and unionization that any of these are part-time employees. I think Apple's hiring them as full-time employees. So your point is granted, but it may not be relevant here. It may be relevant to more the big evil big box stores that emanate out of Bentonville that people so vehemently love or love to hate.
And you may be totally right, but I have no idea which employees specifically the collective bargaining is going to apply to. But to your point about the restricted number of hours, I've worked at many stores over the years where they are straight up and open with you about you will never work more than 32 hours a week, because if you have a rolling average that goes over that, we have to pay you benefits, and we're not going to.
Right, exactly.
And I have seen managers, and this is a sign of bad management, but I've seen managers come out on the floor and come up to someone and say, "You're done working today," and it's because they realized that shift is going to push them over the rolling average, and so they just had to cut them for the rest of the day to keep their hours low enough. And and that's pretty crappy.
Let's
Just
move on, Michelle.
Yeah, I just want to answer that just quick, and then I promise we will. But the only thing I can say there, Jeff, is, and look, if I agree, if you're hired on under those circumstances and you know it, then you take what you get. If as long as if that was explained to you, if it's one of those things that's like, well, maybe you might sometimes, or there's a chance to earn into it. If there's a misrepresentation there or a lack of full representation, then I'm with you. But I think there, here we go, transparency. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with transparency, especially on things like that when it comes to money and benefits. It really is. Jim, this is your big chance. I'll give you the last word on this before we move on. Do you have one?
I'm muted.
He's muted.
Yeah.
I think it's too early to tell. And I don't think it's going to have a big impact on Apple. I think that would be unlikely.
Okay. Well, that's the last word. I hope it doesn't. I'm with you, Jim. I hope it doesn't affect the Apple Store experience that we all know and love. So I'm throwing a link in the chat room that Mr. Fuccio brought to us,
Okay.
so that everybody has it. And this was one. Oh, is it, David? Shoot. Okay, well, Mark, then you're going to have to narrate. Yeah, you're right. It is. You'll have to narrate. But this apparently is a story about someone who tried to repair their iPhone and it didn't go well, shall we say?
Or okay, so this is an old story. It's been out there for a couple of weeks. A New York Times reporter named Brian X. Chen, a great writer who I know his name. I think he wrote for Wired at one point, or maybe a Business Insider. I'm not sure, but he's now at the Times, and he wrote an article, talking about his experience, fixing or replacing the battery on his iPhone 12 or maybe iPhone 12 Pro. And he goes into a lot of the detail about, holy Christ, they put a $1,210, hold on my credit card for tools. And then he gets a delivery, of two large, cases of equipment, from Apple, from FedEx, that are used to assemble and then reassemble the phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, it seemed to me, I couldn't tell if he was trying to write a humorous article But there was a lot of criticism of Apple in there for what they were doing, and he says, "Oh well, Apple's making it very deliberately tough on people because we need all these special tools in order to replace the stuff on the phone." And I thought,
Story made a big splash a month ago.
I know, exactly. And the thing is, I think at the start he says, I was amazed. It cost me $96, to out of pocket versus $69 to go and get it done by Apple. So when I saw that, and that was at the start of the article, I figure, okay, this is I don't know, is the journalistic term a moron? Just trying to write stuff for clickbait purposes, because if you boil down, ultimately, you ask the question, well, why can Apple do it for way less as well? They have economies of scale, they have the expertise, they have the systems in place. So there's been all this pressure for years from companies like iFixit and other right to repair movements in other industries like John Deere tractors and other things around the state. So it seems Apple got out in front of this. With an obviously Kafkaesque, moronic, seeming program, but there it is. And the reason I bring this up is, again, it's there's been speculation about, will Apple capitulate to the EU and put a USB-C port in next generation of iPhone devices, etc. So I think, to me, this is a great case study in beware of what you ask for, especially when you think about unintended consequences of what it is you're asking to get.
I think the bottom line on this is it's not worth it. Period. I mean, the equipment they make you that they send you is into that giant 70-pound box. They put a $1,200 credit charge on your credit card to protect if you don't return that equipment. So you have to repair it within 7 days. If you don't get it done right away, they have no exceptions. There's no rule, because I think someone even said, "Hey, I need a couple extra days." They won't do it because it is being administered by a third party company. It's not actually Apple. So they're doing it for them. I mean, I should say. So, but to go through even a battery, just to replace a battery, I think Apple charges $89 to bring it into the Apple store. They'll replace the battery for you. I think it's going to cost, if you add all the costs, everything, and buying the part, it's like probably a little more than that costs, maybe $110. So it just isn't worth it. And replacing the screen, same thing. And it's a lot of work, and trying to get it open is a challenge. I mean, they have some really great instructions. If you can go out their site and actually read through it. It definitely is. It is great as far as that goes. They did a very good job of documenting it. But do you really want to spend all that time trying to repair it?
Exactly. Like that's exactly right.
No, it's a waste of time.
So
yeah, that's an absolute waste of time.
I wish Kelly were here, because I think Kelly is probably the only one here that can relate in this instance. But the first 4 years of my IT career was doing this. It was repairing phones that sales reps had dropped, whether it be in a toilet, whether it be on top of a car. One person had their phone fly out the window on the freeway. Don't know what they were doing. I'm assuming they weren't driving and talking on their phone. But all of these things happened, and the response from the company was, buy this, a similar $45 iFixit kit, buy a new third-party battery, fix the phone, replace the screen, do what they can. If the back glass was shattered, get some Scotch tape. I don't know what to tell you. Deal with it. But
these must not have been Apple phones then, right?
They were iPhones. They were iPhone 5, 5S's, 6s.
Really? And Apple was telling them, go get
that's the thing, is the companies, the people who buy these phones in bulk for their sales reps.
The companies you mean your employer, the company you're working for?
Yes. Yeah, was working for.
Oh, we've talked about brain dead, stupid companies before on this show as well.
So similar to my statement earlier of this is where a decision can be made that can fundamentally change how people think about a company. I like the idea of Apple saying, if you want these devices to still be under warranty and you want to fix them yourselves, do it with the equipment that we use, and you have to pay for the equipment. The only thing I see is, why is there no way for a business to buy these tools? Because I can tell you now.
How do you know that there isn't? I mean, in the article, he says that.
I mean, so far there is. You rent it, you hold it for longer than 7 days, and when your card gets charged, congratulations.
In the article, the guy mentions he has some other colleague who is a certified Apple repair site, and that person he said is very likely to be buying these tools. So the tools are able to be bought, but for that, Apple requires for better or for worse some sort of minimal skill and certification level. For a company to do it, because for you it's caveat emptor. You thought you could do it. You're the worst type of home improvement or do-it-yourselfer. You didn't have the skills to do it. You effed it up, and it costs you way more money to get it fixed than it would have been just to go to Apple or an Apple partner in the first place.
My recollection when this article came out was there was a lot of response to it in terms of this clickbait, and that's kind of what my thought was. It's like, okay, if this isn't for you, don't do it.
Yeah.
Apple's not forcing you to do this. They're just giving you an option. What's wrong with that?
This panel had a lot more to say about the iPhone customer repair experience article, and that's where we pick up in the next edition of Mac Voices, and I hope you'll join us then. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.